Okay, we did call the meeting to order with the conflict of interest several times, so we'll move on to the minutes of March 5th. They were distributed from the committee. Any questions on these minutes? Do I have someone move them?
John, glad to.
Alan and Brian? All in favor? So moved. Under action items, I will turn this over to Abby and Dirk for their presentations under the action item this week. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So on today's agenda, we have review and discussion, economy, agriculture, and then next steps. So moving into the review and discussion portion, do any committee members have any questions arising from the last meeting or pertaining to this meeting at all? And then moving on to economy. So on our agenda under this topic today, we have an economic development department update, tourism investment toolkit, provincial changes, regionally significant employment areas, renewable energy, and then other considerations. So moving forward, integrating planning and economic development ensures that land use decisions align with local economic goals. The previous amendment to the county official plan through County OPA 3 included several policy changes, including support for agriculture-related, agritourism, on-farm diversified uses, as well as rural employment areas. And then certainly since that time, we've continued to work with the Economic Development Department. I can confidently say that the Planning Department regularly interacts with Kara and her staff. So we have Kara here today to provide the committee with some updates on department initiatives.
Well, thank you, Abby and Dirk, and through you, Chair. I've just got a few economic development department updates that align with our work with the planning department, just for before the committee for information. So first and foremost, I think it's important to note that really all departments here at the county harken back to our strategic objectives and plan with respect to any activities and initiatives that we're undertaking. And so I've identified here sort of the 4 key strategic objectives that align with the work we do in economic development. And certainly as you read through those, I think you will see that they very closely align with planning in a number of areas. We've also made the note here, of course, that Middlesex County is just going through its process. We're just completing our overarching strategic plan, which will replace the one that we had in place to date, and we'll be looking to do similar things as well as we move forward in the future, and always together with our colleagues in other departments. One of the first things I think it's important for you to know about is that we're very engaged with planning and with our local municipalities with respect to community improvement planning. As most of you know, CIPs or community improvement plans are really the only way that a municipality can look to assist or incentivize a business within the Municipal Act. So they need to have a CIP in place in order to do that. So over the course of the last few years, we've worked with 7 out of 8 of the municipalities in Middlesex County to develop CIPs. And so all of those are now in place, but that development is not where the process ends. It's just really the beginning. So the county participated alongside each of the local municipalities in that development in terms of helping to fund that. But we also provide a reimbursement program to our municipalities to foster continuous incentives through the CIPs. And we also go through an annual process of reviewing those CIPs, and when asked, provide that feedback to the local municipalities where improvements could be made. And so we're really pleased that all 7 CIPs are in place now. And just to give you an idea, last year we reimbursed to local municipalities a total of $62,400 for 23 CIP projects. And those projects alone represented a total of over $735,000 in local investment. This year's county staff are looking at creating an additional funding program to assist specifically with housing and working together with the Housing Accelerator Fund. And the 2025 CIP application forms are shared with all of the local municipalities, and in fact, we've already got applications into the program. We're also always closely aligned with our local municipalities as well as the planning department with respect to industrial land development. And the inventory of industrial lands across the county was set up on GIS and shared with the province last year under one of their program requests. We also have a business parks page available on our website that identifies all of the active business parks or even those that have been sold out across the county. The county loan program, I think this is a really important new development. So in 2024, the county loan program, which was previously focused on non-industrial projects, was revamped to focus on industrial development and partnering with local municipalities. And that program is being utilized as well for that purpose already. The Department of Economic Development also is very engaged with the province on a number of levels. Certification and marketing of development-ready industrial lands is available, and interested parties, landowners, both public and private, can work with us together on those programs in which that they can access funding, not only through our office to support them, but also the province has some set programs that can provide up to 50% funding for not only that certification as shovel ready, but also the marketing after of those lands. Middlesex County resources that may be of interest to you. We have a full, active, and searchable business directory for the entirety of the county. It's searchable by NAICS code, by business type, by municipality or area. It's a great tool in terms of investment attraction, in that we can isolate, say, all of the restaurants in an area or all of the manufacturing in a particular area and drill down to particular information on each of those businesses. So that's always available. We also have an investor's guide. You may be more familiar with it being termed a community profile document, but our office consistently produces at least once every other year a document that provides information on demographics, projections, as well as breakdowns with respect to migration, commuting, services available, all organizations that support business development and the like. So that's always available. It's on the website in digital form, but we also have printed copies available in every municipal office and in our county offices as well.
Yes. Question.
Yes.
Well, yeah, can you go back to the slide part previous to that, please?
Yes.
I just want to make mention that the photograph in that on the screen is Ontario Plants, I believe. Kara was extremely helpful in assisting Southwest Middlesex in gaining that growing operation. They're propagators of pepper plants, and they have on 38 acres they made a $19 million investment. That is the first of 4 phases. So we're looking at hundreds of millions here. And they currently are building state-of-the-art accommodation facilities for their offshore workers. These will be equipped with air conditioning, Wi-Fi, all the amenities that anyone would take for granted. And it is the most sophisticated greenhouse operation in the world. It's not a big employer. It's very robotic, and it only will, at this stage, employs about 45 to 55 people, shipping and receiving primarily, where all the handling of the plants is done with high-tech robotic equipment. But I just wanted to mention Kara's involvement in that. We really appreciate it, and it's really quite a great organization to work with, and very visionary. Thank you. No problem.
Thank you, member, through the chair. I think also, this is a great example of how we have been able to adapt to agro-industrial uses in the county that really meet with the strategic vision of the county, do not impose on areas whereby they may impact, right, more greatly what is happening. And so this particular project, although we did not have the 100 acres of agro-industrial space shovel ready in Middlesex County at the time of this inquiry, we were able to work together with the local municipality and a local landowner to ensure that we were not having a greater impact and that we were able to put this immediately abutting or already certified site.
May I ask just a follow-up on that? What kind of services did you need? Did you need water, sewage? How did you manage
We
that?
needed all of the above, but I must say they recapture all of the rainwater. The plants seem to prosper better with natural water than they do with chlorinated water. They have enough water, actually. They have 400,000 cubic meters of water on hand at any one time. That's a lot of water, and they can go 7 months supply. So it's not a great demand on our water system. As I mentioned, the sanitary capabilities, it's not a big drop on our utilities because of the employment is less than 100 people. They use a lot of their own water. And of course, stormwater management, it all goes in their ponds, okay, because they want to recapture as much water as possible again. So it wasn't onerous. It did, because of the proximity to a public school, Echo Public School, right beside it, we wanted to direct traffic. They have a dozen trucks a day coming and going, transport trucks, taking those to various markets, their plants. And we didn't want that truck traffic in front of the school where children are being dropped off by the parents. So we went the road south of that industrial road, and it necessitated putting in a culvert, things like that. And by gosh, they did it all at their expense. They sympathized with our request, and it didn't go through the Drainage Act. They said we'll pay for it. So they're good corporate citizens.
Yeah, question for Ellen.
Yeah.
Light pollution, that's been a.
No, it's
They saw that.
state of the art. They seem to, there's very little light pollution. We were concerned with that. The phone was ringing off the wall. The engineers involved assured us that that won't be a problem at all. And when you drive by at night, it's not like the older Strathroy system that used to light up the skyline. I could see it from Glencoe at times on a clear night. But no, there's been no complaints, and they were as good as their word. Light pollution is minimal, quite honestly. Yeah. It's just they kind of rewrote the book on greenhouse operations. It's the company was flipped. It was owned by a Shedden property at first, the Van Cooeys, I believe, and I met with them several times, just on the backgrounds of Glencoe, particularly the interests in Glencoe, and halfway through, they did flip to a company called Colthra, which is a European company, and deep pockets. They're a $22 billion company, so deep pockets there.
Okay, so the last piece on here is just the fact that we have a direct link. So we actually have a partnership with the real estate board in order to filter all available properties. So if you go on Invest in Middlesex, you'll be able to look at residential, commercial, and industrial properties particular to Middlesex County, as opposed to have to go another way and filter them down yourself. So that's always available as well. So this is our team at present, myself in the director role, Dimitri Maklakos is our economic development officer, Paul Napickett, our tourism officer, and Kelly Hunt, our economic development and tourism coordinator. So ultimately, we are here to help if you ever have a question about economic development, or you're looking to facilitate a particular project, or you have a question about how things are done or how a project came to be, such as Ontario Plants. Myself and the local municipality, I'm sure, will be more than happy to talk to you about that. Now, one of the big projects that we actually worked in tandem with planning on over the course of the last year is a tourism investment toolkit. So this was really something that stemmed from a lot of value-added farm groups coming to us looking at what they could do with their property from a tourism development standpoint. That was really one of the precipice for us to have conversations and for Dirk and I to think about how could we present to investors really the types of investment that we think would be most successful across the county, maybe provide some potential properties of interest to them, and also provide some support and resources particular to this type of investment. So we were very lucky in that we were able to work together with the Ministry of Tourism, and they actually funded 50% of this project for us over the course of the last year. We hired external consultants to work on the toolkits, and we were lucky enough to be able to secure CB Richard Ellis's tourism consulting team. So you may know that name. They're very widely known in the development and real estate business. So the consultants toured various businesses in the county. We held stakeholder and roundtable meetings with municipal interests as well. Those reports were presented to County Council back in June of 2024. And the reports included both a public-facing document and the toolkit itself, but also a gap analysis for internal use. And that's a document that's being utilized by the planners in each of the local municipalities to identify things that may need to be addressed in official plans or other policies to assist in facilitating tourism development. Based on the success of this project, we were actually invited by the ministry to pitch particular properties of investment interest in a Dragon's Den investment event in November. And we've since been following up with many of those that we met with at the time, and some interesting projects have been coming to light. So basically, the toolkit itself started with an inventory of existing tourism assets across the county, and then a gap analysis to identify products and experiences that best benefit and support Middlesex County, and then an assessment of potential sites for new investment, an outline of actions related to land use planning for tourism operators and investors, a summary of best practices and case studies related to the successful tourism business development and expansion in Ontario, and identifying inconsistencies as noted between some of Middlesex County's tourism development goals and any planning policies and regulations. So, in terms of some of the detail, we looked at the resident market, right? So in 2023, Middlesex County had over 82,500 residents and a household income of about 109,000, including the City of London. Of course, the primary resident market featured some 530,000 residents. So this is really important when we look at tourism investment and potential in our counties. In terms of a visitor market, 8.4 million visitors came to Southwestern Ontario in 2021, and 76% same-day visitors and 50% travel in Q3 alone. So Middlesex, in terms of its accommodation market, this is one of the places where, we fall short, I guess we would say. We have 15 properties that were identified in the county, which looks like a lot when you compare it to 45 in London. But if you look at the actual breakdown of that accommodation, we only at that time had 1 hotel, 4 motels or inns, 3 farm stays, and 7 B&Bs, for a total of 164 rooms, whereas in London they were sitting at 3,438 rooms. So CB Richard Ellis conducted a market assessment using information provided by the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport. And I don't think it will come to any surprise in Middlesex County that 47% of those visiting the area are really coming to visit with friends or relatives. That generally tends to be the reason for them coming, followed by sports activities. And many of our municipalities have done an absolutely exemplary job in terms of setting up and establishing recreational facilities that are really the gems of their community and really pose an interesting opportunity. And then you can see, of course, other interests identified there by percentages. So altogether, through the inventory, there were 313 tourism assets identified, 36% of which were culinary, that being restaurants and the like. Agritourism, nature and outdoors, and sports and recreation were the highest performing assets of those identified. Arts and culture and culinary establishments are gaining notoriety, and I think that's evident, and the popularity of publications like our culinary guide really kind of speak to that. And we've been really happy to expand that recently to identify all of the cultural culinary opportunities there are throughout our county, which are growing by leaps and bounds as our geography and our demographics are changing considerably. Some heritage venues are market ready but need better promotion as a cluster of activities. So that includes some of our museums and other heritage types of facilities throughout the county. Private sector itineraries and Indigenous tourism experiences are available in the area as well and could draw a higher demand and additional experiences promotion. So that's one of the things that we have on our radar. And riverfront experiences and boutique retail really are looking for a supportive infrastructure in our community. We are lucky enough to have many rivers flowing through, but we don't see the type of development that we've seen in some other more tourist-focused communities in terms of being able to utilize that asset. Some of that, of course, has to do with conservation area policies, which of course harken back to planning, but also has to do with just the nature thereof of how our communities have been established. Okay, so this basically, this next slide just sort of identified where they fall in terms of high current visitor draw versus market ready or limitations that might be identified thereof.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I just would like to ask Karen a question.
Yeah.
I noticed on the graph that is on the screen here, they mentioned heritage and history tours. And I know that further on down, there was some more information about glamping and that sort of thing. I don't want to get a little too ahead of this, but one of the things that has come to council in the past is Middlesex County Museum, for example, or a heritage center where things could be collected, historical items stored and shared with the public. Is that what you mean by that?
By heritage and history tours? This was more identifying in terms of an asset inventory existing heritage sites, which, you know, we have over 100 identified in the Heritage Trail system that was put together by originally the Community Futures Corporation, together with the county and the local municipalities. So that's where I think the sort of tour and the identification from CB Richard Ellis in terms of utilizing that as a way to bring economic impact into the community. Certainly we're aware of the request and interest of the archival group, and we do promote that. We promote that on our website. We also promote any events and activities that are conducted by them. And we also do the same with our museums, right? So there certainly is opportunities in terms of our role in looking at how we can better foster heritage and cultural identity within our communities. And they certainly do identify you know, the heritage and historical aspects as assets.
As far as heritage and tourism, this being what, 225 years from Middlesex County? Is your department looking at trying to promote anything to get people to come to Middlesex County and look at some of these things, or is there anything like that going on?
So, through you, Chair, as a destination marketing organization, our department does not plan external, like, public-facing events.
Okay.
But what we do is we support those organizations that are looking to do that. So whether that be a local municipality, whether that be a tourism operator, whether that be a festival organizer, we are always there to support them in that endeavor. So we actually have a program called Tourism Initiative Sponsorship. So if there are stakeholders in the community that are looking to do something around that theme or around other themes, there's a variety that are always suggested each year. We do have an application form. Unlike the CIP, which is a reimbursement to the municipality for making those investments, this is a direct partnership or sponsorship, if you will, with tourism organizers. So if someone was looking to do a festival or event that would be public facing and looking to attract visitors, they would be able to apply for some sponsorship to be able to put that together.
Realistically, we're probably not gonna become a destination for somebody's gonna come and spend 2 weeks at the area. Are we more a day tour?
So certainly day tripping is probably one of the highest uses when we look at visitation into Middlesex County. A lack of accommodation is certainly part of the problem in terms of us losing some of that accommodation, of course, to larger centers like London. But there is a tremendous opportunity, and people are showing quite a bit of interest in those farm stays where it may be 2 or 4 days at a time. Certainly if they're engaged in some of recreational and sport activity throughout our communities, that's where that opportunity to really get that economic impact over that, say, long weekend stay, while a tournament is happening, those kind of things, there certainly is opportunities there. But you are correct. You know, we are a wonderful place to be able to come and enjoy tourism activities, even if it's just for a day.
Okay.
All right. So in terms of those tourism investment opportunities, sort of the, you know, short list is identified here. So they had some key evaluation criteria in terms of private sector investment potential, site considerations, market and financial feasibility, and tourism destination. So of the 12 identified opportunities, they really went to focus on 3 in particular. One being glamping and outdoor adventures, 2 being small independent hotel or corporate retreat center, again trying to extend that stay, right, from a day trip a little bit longer, and the 3rd being a microbrewery. So again, just looking at not just the assets that are in place now, but opportunities, looking at sites, looking at what that feasibility is financially as well was an important part of this process. And so in terms of the glamping and outdoor activities, they went into some detail here in terms of really the upscale establishment featuring 10, I can't even say that. Geodesic, thank you. That's a planning term I don't run into very often. But really kind of looked at what was out there in the market that would be attractive, that was gaining interest from people. And this is one of the identifiers that they thought was quite achievable and of some considerable interest, I would say, of many of our farming operators across the county. Capital costs here, you know, are significantly lower than you will see in some other investments, and so this was identified. they also identify, oh, sorry.
Sorry,
Sorry, I
just-
gotta look this way.
Just to that point, I'm on the board of the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority, and they have just erected cabins, and they went like, it's so much so that they're considering trying to put into the budget next year. I think they have 6 and expanding. But they're on Lake Whittier, and they went really, so just a note.
For you, Chair, we are definitely seeing that as being one of the unique opportunities, and again, you know, it doesn't have significant financial contributions when you look at other types of tourism investment. And as you know, many of our farm operators are looking for other opportunities that could extend their season or extend their opportunity for revenue generation. And it certainly has come up in many of our conversations with planning as to how we are able to facilitate that under the current policy guidelines. Also identified was the opportunity for a small independent hotel. Again, recognizing the limitations, I guess, in certain respects of our county in terms of draw and in terms of the fact that we are having a large urban center at our doorstep that offers different accommodations than maybe would be successful here. This really went along around the 50 room mark. So that small boutique hotel is certainly of interest. And I can tell you from the Dragon's Den meeting that we had in Toronto with several hoteliers, this is certainly something of interest, and they do have Middlesex area on their radar. And also a microbrewery. We've seen a little bit of take up in this realm. We've had a couple of microbreweries in the Strathroy region over the course of many years. We have one operating now. I would say this microbrewery also extends the opportunity for some spirits. We now have Anyone Spirits that has recently opened, and they have their still bar in Mount Bridges. We also have 2 cideries now, one in Town Center at Hemans that has been operating for a few years now, and a new one at Cunnington's just north of Arca. So this certainly is something that people are looking at. It is something that seems to be developing quite well across Southern Ontario and is creating the opportunity for a bit of a regional route as well. So again, largely stemming around that day tripping, but I could see this definitely extending into a longer stay opportunity for those that are really interested in craft brews or craft ciders.
So in terms of the policy findings from this report, they essentially let us know that the county's official plan and the strategic plan are strongly aligned with economic development objectives regarding tourism as an economic driver. And again, I would just note that that's the previous strategic plan that they are speaking to, that the consultants are speaking to. And then lands outside of settlement areas are prime agricultural lands with very few site-specific designations. And as such, the PPS policies are generally limiting towards encouraging these larger scale types of recreational or tourism oriented opportunities, which is viewed to pose a bit of a barrier when you're contemplating these types of uses outside the scope of an on-farm diversified use, which is generally limited to 2% of the total area of any given agricultural lot. Additionally, the consultants found that each local municipality has a unique approach with regards to the use of land use planning tools to achieve tourism and economic development objectives, whether that be the policies in their official plans or what's written into their CIPs. Available tourism policies activate existing assets and predominantly focus on areas within the agricultural designation. As an example, agritourism uses. And local official plans could concentrate greater policy language towards the promotion of commercial tourism beyond agritourism, which is certainly something that we're going to factor into this exercise here at the county level through the official plan update.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add,
Yep.
it was really interesting working with CARES Group and the tourism related, the consultant, because they do bring a different lens to it than the planners do sometimes. And I guess it's just a couple of things I would note. It is more complex for Middlesex and Southwestern Ontario because of our prime ag lands and the policy framework that is in place compared to if you're maybe in Eastern Ontario where you have rural lands, which are not the same level of agricultural activity. So sometimes you see things there that sort of happen and it's not as easy to make it happen here. The recommendations, there's the public facing part that CARES team are continuing to work with. They have given us some their advice and they brought on their own planner and kind of looked at our policies. And generally some of that will come forward with the official plan amendment that Abby's working on. Most of their advice was actually geared to the local municipalities and changing those policies and even zoning, et cetera. So we are going to be working with the municipalities on that over the next couple of, over the coming months and years even. So I would just say it was an interesting exercise to have that different perspective on the issue than just from a pure planning perspective. Of course, Kara or any of us would be happy to answer any other questions.
I will move forward with provincial changes then. So we have an excerpt here on this slide from the new PPS that speaks to economic development and competitiveness, and further provides that planning authorities shall provide for an appropriate mix and range of employment, institutional, and broader mixed uses to meet long-term needs. Municipalities shall identify strategic sites for investment, monitoring the availability and suitability of employment sites, including market-ready sites, and seeking to address potential barriers to investment, as well as addressing land use compatibility adjacent to employment areas by providing an appropriate transition to sensitive land uses. And I would say generally, like at a high level, a lot of the changes on this topic to the new PPS really focus in on mitigating any land use incompatibility issues between sensitive land uses and our employment areas. So in addition to that, the new PPS requires municipalities to plan for and protect areas of employment, which I will discuss in greater detail in coming slides. It additionally requires municipalities to address transition and land use compatibility between areas of employment, and specifically requires a 300-meter barrier or distance separation between these employment areas and adjacent uses. It also encourages municipalities to preserve areas of employment that are close to goods movement corridors, coordinating across administrative boundaries. And further, it allows municipalities to consider employment area conversions at any time to support the forms of development and job creation that suit the local context, provided that sufficient employment land is available to accommodate employment growth. Prior to this framework, the PPS required that employment land conversions generally be considered through the municipal comprehensive reviews, subject to a few outliers, but now it kind of, it's removed the requirement for municipal comprehensive reviews for employment areas as well. So through recent amendments to the Planning Act, as well as the implementation of the new PPS, the province has included an updated definition of employment areas, which is as follows. So employment areas are areas designated in an official plan for clusters of business and economic activities, including manufacturing, research, and development, in connection with manufacturing, warehousing, goods movement, associated retail and office, and ancillary facilities. An employment area also includes areas of land that are described by subsection 1.1 of the Planning Act, which is amended from time to time. Uses that are excluded from employment areas are institutional and commercial, including retail and office that is not associated with the primary employment uses that are listed above. So essentially, the province has really scoped this definition to include your true industrial type uses and those uses that typically employ greater numbers than your regular commercial type uses. So in terms of employment areas in the current county official plan, we require local municipalities to designate employment lands that provide for a range and mix of employment opportunities. As well, we encourage municipalities to designate rural employment lands to accommodate industrial, manufacturing, and creative rural economy type uses. And further, the county official plan also clarifies that these rural employment lands are typically for industrial and limited commercial uses, which do not require significant amounts of water and that don't produce significant amounts of effluent. So like typical examples of these rural employment type uses would be something like a truck terminal, agricultural service establishments, contractors' yards, food processing. All of those types of uses are generally permitted within these areas where they are identified. Yeah.
You talk about food processing, or all aspects of that, whether it be vegetable, livestock processing, any food processing.
Yep, so something like an abattoir also would be considered, yeah, a rural employment type use. So in terms of preliminary policy options, the county official plan should be amended to include the changing policy direction in the PPS as it pertains to this new idea of employment areas. As well, employment area policies should set the framework for how local municipalities will plan for employment through their local official plans and zoning bylaws. And this could include employment area conversions and kind of setting a framework or criteria for how requests for employment area conversions will be considered. Mitigation of sensitive land uses, so that 300 meters. Land use compatibility between employment and non-employment areas. And then also to consider including policy direction related to industrial plans of subdivision or condominium, because we have seen a few of those pop up in the county over the last few years. The next slide that I'm going to speak to is preliminary policy options pertaining to regionally significant employment areas. So we've seen some examples of these in other jurisdictions, and they are provided for in provincial planning documents. And essentially what a regionally significant employment area is that it's an area that is set aside and that is strategically important for accommodating major employment uses and supporting the regional economy. So this could include clusters of business and economic activities, including manufacturing, research and development, warehousing, goods movement, and ancillary facilities, very much so aligning with the definition that I previously discussed. The official plan could be amended to set a framework for the establishment of regionally significant employment areas at the local level. So essentially we would provide some high-level criteria and a general policy framework that could be further utilized by the local municipalities in terms of implementation. So I'm not sure if any members of the committee had any questions in this regard, or if there's anything.
How much employment areas does the province want? Percentage of how big a municipality is, or so much for 10,000 people, or what's their definition of sufficient?
in terms of land needs for employment areas. So the new PPS actually requires that municipalities align their population and employment projections with those provided to us by the Ministry of Finance. So we would be considering our employment land needs almost concurrently with the exercise that includes updating our population projections. So that information will be presented to the committee at a future meeting. But that's the directive currently within the policy framework, is to align our population and employment projections with the Ministry of Finance. And then do the further step on that would be doing a land needs assessment.
To the chair, if I may just add, the regionally significant employment areas might extend beyond that. The traditional way that we establish land use is, as you know, is you project the amount of population and therefore how much land you need to have those dwellings. For employment, you project the number of jobs you anticipate based on your population. You convert that number of jobs per hectare, and that's how much land you need. A regionally significant employment area might be something that's broader, that's more Ontario-wide or international. You see that near St. Thomas and some of those other very large proposals that aren't strictly tied to our local population. They're obviously serving, based on the proximity of the 400 series highway, that larger provincial or even international sort of market.
And I think another thing to add to the regionally significant employment list too, there would be a lot of spin-off opportunities from the establishment of something that would meet this, test as being regionally significant. So it would be beneficial to the economy at a broader scale as well.
I think part of the problem is, municipalities may have some land available, but it's to get that land serviced. Where do you come up with the money to service some of this land? We're like, my own municipality, we looked at Delaware area as a couple hundred acres, and we're looking at $40 million to service it. So how do you may have the land, but how do you get it serviced? Because municipality our size just can't really afford to go ahead and do that. I don't know what we do. How kind of chicken and egg thing, like, how do you accomplish that?
Maybe Kara would talk about shovel ready and some of her experiences on that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So through you, Chair, I would say, you have identified one of the significant barriers in terms of the financial feasibility of servicing land, and we do have quite a number of acres of industrial significant lands throughout Middlesex County. We've identified that through GIS, working with planning and with the local municipalities to do so. Another part of the problem is that provincial programs do exist that are providing some support for servicing and being modified to be adaptable to us applying for that in the rural context, because it is so much more difficult in order to do that. But generally speaking, they are looking for sort of that chicken and egg approach, where you've got someone who's interested in the land and therefore you're trying to ready it for that presumed purpose, in which case, you may be too late, right? For those investments that are already looking for that shovel ready land. Once a property does become sort of shovel ready from aspects other than servicing, they might be archaeological information, environmental studies, all of that. Those types of supports are available through a different program. So the Certified Site program, which we have exercised in Thames Centre for the Thorndale Park, which is now sold out. We've exercised that in Strathroy-Caradoc for the Molnar Park. And we've also utilized that at one time for the Glencoe Industrial Park. And now they're looking to maybe redo that with a different configuration of those sites. It is that, we do have some constraints within the current financing available for those projects. That needs to be looked at, and certainly the province is aware, but we need to continue to make them aware of the gap in terms of that readiness and yet inability to be able to finance these projects.
I think, sort of,
No, you go ahead.
basically a follow-up on what you're saying, but in the past, you have certain industrial lands that are designated. And you can't add any unless you take away from some. That's been the past practice. Is this all changing all that basic thinking like that you can justify, or if you're able to justify another 100 acres of industrial land, you don't have to take away from what you already have? Is that?
So are you speaking specifically to the regionally significant employment lands or just employment areas
Employment area lands.
generally?
Generally.
Yeah, so they have loosened the criteria in terms of that requirement to have to take away. So I would say generally in staff's view, it provides councils with a little bit more flexibility when you're contemplating designating, redesignating lands in that capacity.
Because that has been a struggle, because people who have industrial land don't want to give it up to put it to a more appropriate place, you know, for lack of a better term. As to your point, rural, like outside of the town, we have serviced areas, but we'd have to take away from, in the past, we'd have to take away what we have to make it more appropriate. And that's a long process sometimes. People want to, that's good to hear. That's what I was hearing, but I wanted to just confirm that that's the case.
Yeah, thank you, John. I know that large employers are very often glamorized by planning. But when you look at the statistics out of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, small employers collectively are a very significant part. And I think in any planning policy, this has to be identified. I hate this terminology. I was an independent business operator for 46 years, but the ma and pa businesses, and I very seldom use that word, I hate it, but they employ a lot of people. When you add to that the financial sector and the insurance sector in these downtown small villages and hamlets, there's a significant amount of people. And you know, I think that in any planning policy, I think that has to be recognized, because collectively they are a major employer, big time, and they generally trump the large. In recent events south of the border, we may find the automotive industry may not be what it has been in the past. There's going to be some significant changes. I think the U.S., where they were once our friends, are now just an associate entity, and we may not find those large. And of course, with robotics, a lot of these large companies are robotically manned, as opposed to a beating heart. So I think we can't lose sight of the independent business sector. So it's you know, Kara in her department touched this very strongly, but on the planning of it, I don't see it given the status that we should have.
I think just following with what you're saying, and I agree that small and, let's say, small and medium-sized business. Our local electrician firms that used to have 4 or 5 people now have 40. You know, employees working for them. There are a lot of small, medium-sized, whatever you want to call them. They've just expanded their businesses. They might have a smaller footprint, but their employment numbers are really good. Just that.
Melbourne Farm Equipment,
Yeah.
100 people.
If I could, Chair, through you, I think it's a really important note that in all of Canada, less than 2% of businesses have over 500 employees. So the great vast majority of even the major industrial projects, such as Ontario plans, do not have the employment statistics that you may have been used to in previous years when the industry, you know, represented different sectors. We're very diverse here in Middlesex County, which is a tremendous asset with respect to our business investments, industrial and commercial base. but largely you will not see, but the regionally significant areas are still very important and still provide that opportunity for areas larger than our own to have significant economic impact, as long as they are strategically planned.
And just, like, those businesses are very important, but just you look at the local municipalities, how many people they employ throughout the county.
Yeah,
The numbers
Yeah.
are huge.
they
Numbers
are,
huge.
yeah, big time, John. I think it can be, I think some of the statements can be rounded out to significantly show the importance of independent business. You taking notes, Dirk?
Absolutely.
That's great feedback. Okay, so we can move forward with the renewable energy slide. So this policy before us is a new addition to PPS. And it provides that planning authority should provide opportunities for the development of energy supply, including electricity generation facilities and transmission and distribution systems, energy storage systems, district energy, renewable energy systems, and alternative energy systems to accommodate current and projected needs. This aligns with some of the other work that the province is doing through the IESO and the goal to improve the province's power grid. In terms of preliminary policy options on renewable energies, the official plan could be updated to provide policy direction pertaining to the development of such uses in accordance with OMAFA's permitted uses guideline and subject to criteria expected to be provided from the province in future guidelines. The official plan could also be updated to include the PPS definitions of renewable energies and renewable energy system. As well, policies could be developed to guide consideration of larger renewable energy proposals within agricultural areas.
Just on that, if you look at Stanton Farms, just north of Hilton, they supply significant amount of gas and hydro to the village of Hilton. They probably supply enough of both those products to supply 3/4 of the village of Hilton with natural gas and electricity. They have digesters up there that are working 24/7 producing stuff. And I know just recently, Lori Stanton, the owner, I was at the ceremony where he received the King's Medal for renewable resources from, it was quite a presentation, and it's quite a medal that he got. So they are doing a lot up there with renewable resources, and if anybody ever wanted to go up and take a look at it, I could certainly arrange that for Lori because it's quite an operation to see.
They deserve a medal, John. They went through a lot of hoops to get that to work.
Oh,
to get that
absolutely,
to happen.
absolutely. I know Lori was, my number was on Lori's quick dial. I spoke to him many times.
I think renewable energy is important. Dirk, we are next door neighbors with Kent County. And when you look at the wind turbines, like as soon as you hit Thamesville, Thamesville on, it's just wind turbine after wind turbine after wind turbine. And when you're heading from west east and you hit Middlesex County, it abruptly stops. So we find Southwest Middlesex are now, we've heard in the coffee shop that many farmers have had people knocking at the door asking about wind turbines, whether they would object to it. The objections seem to be softening somewhat. People aren't as adverse to them as they once were. But I'll tell you, compared to Kent County, Middlesex County have a lot less renewable energy.
I added Metcalf at a fair number of.
Yeah, they do.
turbines.
Yep, they're
Can
getting
leave
that.
Metcalf, North Middlesex.
Yeah.
And then heading into York.
Yeah,
kind
you
of
know
along
that,
that way.
Yeah,
And
But you have to have a big power line to take it.
Yes,
Yeah, well,
That's probably why some of us never.
well, if we don't have it, we're getting one. That
Maybe.
Longwoods to Lakeshore power line is huge.
That's what you need, is that and wind.
That's a big line,
right, the wind is the least part of it,
Yeah.
there's,
yeah,
if it wasn't for the power lines coming from Bruce,
yeah.
coming down through there, that's where they hooked in.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's the ultimate, I just, if we can have that conversation a little bit, I don't know if that's the ultimate, what Stanton's are doing is they're producing food, they're producing agriculture, and this is a byproduct of it.
Yeah.
It's still pretty controversial, the wind. I think, Ian certainly knows that. We went through quite a time there for a while with the wind, and there is starting to see some chinks in that armor. Not so much here, but in Chatham Kent, we're starting to,
Oh, big
as they
time.
get a little older, and now who's stuck with them and all those other things. But,
That was the biggest hoax there ever was.
yeah, I didn't want to say it like that, but okay.
Well, it kills whales even there, because.
Well, there's, people extreme on each side, but it's a little more controversial. I can't get exact numbers, or I can't seem to get exact numbers as to what it produces and what's the cost of the production per kilowatt hour. But I still like the idea of renewable energy.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it be, but yeah, so in our area, we went through it, and it was quite controversial at the time. In 2008, 2010 time, it was an interesting time.
Absolutely.
But it's the only energy that puts money into the local community.
Yes, we were very fortunate, I would say, that we do get the vibrancy fund that comes from that, at least that allows us to do some things. There are some spin-offs that are very positive.
I mean, the actual farmers,
To the farmers who own them, though, I don't know what the lease numbers are, but
1,000 plus.
is it per year for
Yeah.
So there's an income to the farmer, there's no question. And if you're looking at diversifying income in agriculture.
That line has been proposed from the Melbourne Road that goes between Melbourne and Stratford over there. That's where that line will start, and it goes to Lakeshore, Lake St. Clair area. And we were just advised yesterday that because Southwest Middlesex are hosting that and assisted Hypermont with that, that we will get a gift of anywhere from $2 to $3 million for hosting that line. So it's, I guess. No, and you know what, because the agricultural sector are sacrificing the most, we want to make sure that 2 or 3 million is spent in an interest that the agricultural sector are fond of, because they are the individuals who are giving up the land, and I guess they get some money out of it as well, but they're carrying the large weight of the load on their shoulders. We're the municipality, but they're carrying some of the burden. So we want to make sure that however we invest that money, has to patronage agriculture sector to some degree.
Did you say the farmers are getting some income from that?
I believe they are, yeah,
And
they
the
are.
windmills, they get,
Yeah, the towers are, yeah,
lease or whatever.
they're big towers. I'll tell you, those towers they're putting in are huge.
You're paying once for a tower.
Yeah,
We'd like to maybe go to ongoing payments.
yeah, yeah,
It's definitely against that.
yeah, they are. Yeah, they are against that. I made that inquiry yesterday. You know,
But it is a spin-off.
Yeah.
The income to the farmer is a spin-off of the renewable energy.
but they got a plan around them.
Alright, so moving on to other considerations, so this is just an opportunity for the committee to identify any other topics for further discussion or analysis by staff on the economic development or economy topic.
I'll kick it off. Couple of things. There hasn't been a lot of, Kara alluded to it in one of her slides, that First Nations people have events that can be a tourist attraction. I've had the privilege of going to some powwows, and I was amazed why wasn't I taking my children when they were young to these? I went as mayor to give our respects to the First Nation neighbors. But I spent the whole day there with my wife, and we had a blast. But I think it's not only politically correct, but I think it would be an oversight not to come up with a statement in your planning documents that say, we respect the contributions to our culture and our identity that First Nations give us, and that in planning we want to make sure that we work with partners on certain projects and things like that. But I think you've got to have some spin on identifying First Nations. We've got several nations around us. We've got Muncie, Delaware, Oneida, Delaware, Moravian Town, Delaware. We've got, and there's more. And the map, I think there's 4 nations. And I just wonder if it wouldn't be beneficial. It may prevent some criticism down the road. If it's not there, I think you might get criticized on it. That maybe some statement of First Nations should be like it's part of your plan policy, that if you feel like you're that if there is a project going on that is within, let's say, the Thames River Basin or watershed, that it has to be consultation with First Nations, maybe.
That happens now, does it not?
Yeah, through the chair, there is some language in the county's official plan as of the last update that speaks to Indigenous engagement and the county's duty to consult. And then in addition to that, through this process, I would just note that letters have been sent on behalf of the ward, and we're reaching out to our Indigenous communities and neighbors and trying to arrange just a discussion that Brian and others would sort of sit down and sort of meet those nations, consult with them and whatever they see appropriate. So we are working on that.
Yeah, I remember the last update. I think I mentioned it then. The other thing too, that in terms of agricultural products, we have an amazing tree canopy in Middlesex County. And it's because of that tree canopy that we have some really good maple syrup producers. And, that's an agricultural crop anymore. And, I really like to go through food. I've seen Middlesex syrup in Foodland. I've seen Middlesex syrup in No Frills. And that really bodes well for even a tourist destination too. People, the Elsie Craig set up around there. What's the name of that family that's got that one around?
There's 2. They're both McLaughlin.
Yeah,
One's
McLaughlin,
Fort Rose.
yeah,
The other
Fort
one's-
Rose, yeah. But I think those are great. They're a great agriculture product, food product, food stuff, and I think it brings in some tourism. And I think there's great photo opportunities to have maple syrup production on that. I think it'd be great to have something on. I know Quebec really promote this, and I know we're not to the extent of Quebec, but Quebec base a lot of tourism on maple syrup. But I like to see Middlesex County is one of the few counties that have the quality of syrup that you see around. And again, it's because we have a great, Kent County has no tree canopy. And it's gone. You could drive down 401, you can't see a tree from Chatham to Windsor. And I'd like to see something like that in the official plan.
I was just gonna say, I know that Tara and her team
Yeah.
promote farm
They
gate
do, yeah,
products.
Yeah.
they do. I know they do.
Just make that.
Yeah. Well, it would be-
But in the official plan.
yeah, in the planning document. I know Kara does her part on that, but I'm wondering about the planning of it. But I think they could pull up their socks on that a little bit too, because it's a really valued industry. Nothing more, John.
Comments?
So the greenhouse that they put in their town did $19 million investment, 45.
No, yeah, no.
Yeah. So it'd be better to have like 3 small businesses that employ like
You know,
50 people. Is that the
you
point?
know what, our grocery stores employing more people than that $1 million greenhouse.
Why do they want to get such big businesses that use this big number?
It's,
There's no real
they
big-
have 1/3 of the North American market in peppers. Every pizza you eat, peppers, it's got peppers on it that come from Ontario plants. But yeah, they're all robotic. The plants are planted robotically. They are picked up and put on shipping containers. A guy in a forklift just loads them on Sunday. They've got something like, I think they've got about 15 days for trucks to back into. They're loaded. They have a secret recipe. They have a block of, for lack of better words, oasis, you know, and it's about the size of a brick. They put a 18-inch dowel, they stick it in the middle of it, pop a seed in there in 10 days. That plant's 18 inches tall. 10 days, and they have 1/3 of the market. And you know what? They're great to have. We're going to get good tax money out of that, property tax money. Although it's John that taxed on agriculture, but they have they have cafeterias, the shipping and receiving. That's all taxed at commercial, but the growing area taxed at farm. But yeah, we glean a great benefit on assessment.
Anything else? Good, we take a 5-minute break. Take a 5-minute break. And stretch your legs for a second. And we'll carry on. Yeah, As soon as Rebecca's ready to go, you ready to go? Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order, and I'll turn it back over to Abby.
Thank you, Chair. So we're gonna move on to the agriculture topic. And on today's agenda for that, we are going to discuss minimum farm parcel size. And we have Stubble and Associates, the agronomist who undertook the agricultural lot size study back in 2021 as part of the previous county official plan review with us today to discuss that. Then we are going to move on to provincial change, the agricultural system, residents surplus to a farming operation, settlement area boundary expansions, and then other considerations. So moving forward with minimum farm parcel size. So a key component of managing the agricultural resource is the general discouragement of lot creation to avoid the unwanted fragmentation of agricultural land. Currently, the county official plan limits the creation of new farm parcels to about 40 hectares, as do all of our local official plans. At the section 26 meeting back in January of this year, County Council passed a motion that staff be directed to include consideration of agricultural parcel size as part of the OPA through this ongoing exercise. So that's why we're going to discuss it today. So in terms of provincial policy on lot creation and minimum farm parcel size, the PPS provides that lot creation in prime ag areas is discouraged and may only be permitted for agricultural uses, provided that the lots are of a size appropriate for the type of agricultural uses common in the area and are sufficiently large to maintain flexibility for future changes in the type or size of agricultural operations. So really just providing for future flexibility in the event of an ownership change or anything of that nature. The PPS does not specify a minimum farm parcel size, but generally what we've heard from our planning counterparts in the province is that 40 hectares is the minimum size unless otherwise demonstrated. So this quote that I have here on the provincial guidance slide is from OMAFA's permitted uses in prime agricultural areas guideline, which is something that us planners frequently refer to in our context here in Middlesex County, given the amount of prime ag lands that we have here. And it states that in general, the larger the farm parcel, the more adaptable it is to changing conditions. So you can kind of go either way, and more efficient it is to run the farm. Keeping farms large enough to maintain flexibility is key to agricultural viability and to achieving the PPS requirement of protecting prime agricultural areas for long-term use in agriculture. Lot size may vary depending on the agricultural use. For traditional field crops, large lots are optimal. Higher value specialty crops tend to be located on smaller parcels. In all cases, lots must still be large enough to maintain flexibility for future changes in the type or size of the agricultural operation. And I just want to point out that in terms of specialty crops, so we have areas in Ontario where they actually have gone and identified specialty crop areas, and those are typically comprised of like tender fruit growing. So like the Niagara region is a big supplier on the specialty crop front for like grapes and stuff, and then places where they have like optimal growing conditions for cherries and stone fruit are also typically identified as those specialty crops, and they are largely located in the Greater Golden Horseshoe. So the county official plan currently provides that consents for new farm lots shall generally not be considered where the result is the creation of a farm lot less than 40 hectares. Consents for the creation of new farm lots shall be considered where both the size of the lands being severed and the lands being retained are appropriate to 1, the type of agriculture being engaged in or proposed to be engaged in, and 2, the type of agricultural activity and farm lot size common in the area. And then there's also some language that speaks to how this is to be treated locally. And then through County OPA 3, we included the policy that's at the top of this slide that states a different minimum farm parcel size for local municipalities may be considered through an amendment to the county official plan, provided that a study is carried out by the local municipality with the guidance and assistance of the province to demonstrate that the different farm parcel size is appropriate for the type of agricultural uses common in the local area, yet is sufficiently large enough to maintain flexibility for future changes to the type or size of agricultural operations. And this wording in this policy was largely based off some experiences in Lambton County, and more specifically, I believe that was the outcome of a tribunal hearing. And we have our consultants here, Rob Stubble, who might be able to expand on that a little bit for the committee.
Hey folks, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so I was retained by Lambton County to provide evidence at a hearing that focused specifically on that 40 hectare criterion. And a revised policy was developed that recognized the aerial distribution and sizes of farm parcels in the county. And we found that 2 of the townships had smaller farm parcels on average than what the other parcels or other townships had. And this was a result of historic land fragmentation and also different types of farming, some more smaller farms for specialty crop growing, that kind of thing. And it was a difficult hearing. It wasn't, I'm not going to say it was a piece of cake. And basically what I did and my son is we went through the township and we counted up every farm parcel and did the sizes on them and compared that to what the impact data was. And it took a lot of work, but we got it approved. And in general, you'll find that while OMAF says 40 hectares is the minimum, we found that's not to be the case. It's less than that. And it's because of historic patterns, and say the 401 or 402 has cut through parts of farms, and hydro corridors, railroad lines, that kind of thing. Rivers is another one. So we were able to build on that and show the board that a smaller parcel size could still be considered and was reasonable given the policy framework. But I have to stress again, it wasn't an easy fight to get the province to recognize it. In fact, I would bet that they would, even though the data could be similar to Lambton, I'd still bet they'd fight you on it. That's just the way they are. They want to stick to their 40 hectare limit. So that's one of the experiences that I had. I would say that we also have had experiences where, given historic changes in legislation, smaller farm parcels are viable now for certain types of farming. One of the big changes that we've seen is the Nutrient Management Act and how it allows for brokers to move manure off of farm parcels to other sites for the disposal of the manure. And that means that in the past, from the Agricultural Code of Practice, we're walking way back to 1976, that guideline the objective of it was to ensure that all the manure that was generated from the livestock farm was to be used on the farm. And now with the Nutrient Management Act, they've changed that, and they recognize that the manure can be moved to adjacent farm parcels or other areas that want the manure. It's actually a commodity, so it's a sellable commodity. Which is, I don't think when I started doing this back in the 80s, I don't think we ever viewed it as that way, even though it may have been. So that was the one experience that I had. And then I just wanted to review from the Foodland Guidelines. So that's a document from 1978, 4 criterion that were used at that time to determine minimum farm parcel size. So those criteria are, the first one's the agricultural capability of the soils on site. Now, that's really not going to impact Middlesex that much because basically all of the county is class 1 to 3, except where there are rivers, that kind of thing. The second criterion is flexibility. And the guideline that it was set out at the time, pre-Nutrient Management Act, is that farm parcel sizes must stay sufficiently large to permit making changes which may have different land requirements to be economically sound. And again, the code of practice was set out to ensure that the manure was sufficiently treated on the property and that you wouldn't overload nutrients on your farm property. The third criterion is deals with suitability. I've always interpreted that criteria to be in specialty crop areas such as Niagara, Fruit Belt, or Holland Marsh, that you can actually have a parcel that's smaller and still will generate enough revenue on average for farmers to have a reasonable income. The downside of all those types of especially crop areas is that the price per acre is quite a bit higher than what common field crop land would be. So I think there's a benefit at the end, but it's getting into the market that's quite a bit more difficult. And the other part about the suitability criterion, and I'll just read a section from this, is that while some kinds of specialized farming, such as fruit or vegetable production, can be viable on much smaller parcel sizes than livestock or traditional field crop operations, these smaller farms are generally concentrated in areas where necessary related facilities, such as cold storage or processing plants, are available. So I guess to make that argument for a smaller farm parcel, you'd want to see some of the related infrastructure to be available too. And then the fourth criterion is viability, and this is a very difficult thing to assess. In some of the counties, I think like in Oxford County, if you want to have a smaller farm parcel, you have to prepare a farm business plan that's reviewed by a person such as myself to see if it's a reasonable, viable plan. And the plan would take into account what type of crop you're growing or what's your commodity. But what it doesn't assess, and these are the types of things that are assumptions, are individual farmers' skill set, knowledge, their ability to innovate. Any farm plan can't take into account how the weather is going to be. If you have one bad season, you could end up losing your operation on a smaller farm parcel. Or market conditions. And market conditions with our friend to the south are very difficult to predict. If you had a commodity like our family did that relies on exports south of the border, you might have a difficult time ensuring that farm operation was viable. So those are the different things that we take into consideration when we're looking at smaller farm parcels. So I look back in time about what happened in Foodland Guidelines. We look at new legislative changes such as the Nutrient Management Act, and then we assess the farm parcel sizes that are common within the area. So it's fair bit of work, and we've found that you really have to work to convince OMAP that smaller farm parcels are something to be considered. So that's my 2 cents on it. We should probably go through the rest of the slideshow here before we if there's any questions.
Yeah, so,
And maybe just as you pull that up and Abby starts talking, and I should have introduced Mr. Stovall before. Rob has done this work through Lambton County and a number of other areas as an agronomist, as a planning background, etc. At the time of the last county's official plan, the county engaged him and did the detailed analysis, looked at all the properties that you mentioned and impact codes, and did all that work again. Based on the direction that council gave staff a few months ago, we looked at chatted with Rob. Of course, the land fabric hasn't meaningfully changed within Middlesex County in our view over the last 3 years. So we didn't replicate, our idea is not to replicate the study, but rather to look at the study, make sure the conclusions, which at the time were not to go to 50 acres, make sure those conclusions are still appropriate, and then have Rob attend and answer any questions. So really that was sort of just as background.
okay, so arguments for and against reducing minimum farm parcel sizes. So it is argued that farming practices are supported by larger farm parcels, given that they maintain greater flexibility. As well, they are more suitable for livestock, in that it makes it a bit easier for livestock operations when they are contemplating an expansion due to the requirements of the Nutrient Management Act. In contrast, it is argued that smaller farm parcels, of course, are less expensive to purchase, support specialty farm operations that typically require less land, and they support value-added agriculture. Rob, do you want to speak to this slide?
Yeah, I'm pumping my tires here. So I've been in business for, I guess it's 37, 38 years going on. And, we've provided evidence at OMB and OLT hearings. So Dirk contacted me in 2021, and I think it was a couple years back, and we did my son and I did the analysis, and we worked using a similar process as what we did in Lambton County, and we considered the impact data and the soils data, and provided a statistical analysis, both averages and medians of farm parcel sizes. And when we looked at the data recently, 2025, just a few months ago, that there really hasn't been that much change on it, but there are still some changes. Some of the changes that may have happened over the past 4 years that we haven't seen all the data would be things like severances related to surplus farm residences, things like that, or possibly agriculture related severances. So, there's some changes, but not a lot. I think our findings and our direction are still appropriate. And it's on the parcel size analysis. It's a difficult thing. You'll find that most of the parcels are, or there is a lot of parcels that are smaller than the 40 hectare criterion. And you'll find that there are a few that are larger than the 100 acre or 150 acres. And there's probably not going to be that much of an opportunity to split farms in half. You'd have to have, at the 40 hectare criterion, you'd have to have a 200 acre parcel. There's a few of them. There's not a lot, but there's a few of them. But we've also found that the farmers that are interested in farming, they also want the big parcels. It's a lot easier to farm it, and a lot more economical when you rev up the engines and let her roll. So that's about it. Next slide.
I can speak to this one.
Go ahead.
So this mapping was created by one of our planning technicians, Alex Colton. And she provided technical support the last time around back in 2021 as well. And essentially this map just shows an inventory of the county's agricultural parcel fabric for various sizes, including parcels that are greater than 200 acres, parcels that are greater than 150 acres, and then parcels that are greater than 100 acres. And I always think that looking at a map like this is a little bit fascinating just to see where the concentrations of the larger parcels are in the county. It's very interesting. And then the next slide here is essentially just a blown up version of the chart from the previous slide that assisted staff in calculating lot creation potential based on the various minimum farm parcel size options. So I would say on the surface, the lot creation potential based on minimum farm parcel size varies significantly. And just for the committee's information, if we were to maintain the status quo at 100 acres, based on these numbers, approximately 91 additional parcels could be created across the county. If we were to drop the minimum parcel size to 75 acres, approximately 351 parcels could be created across the county. And then if we were to further reduce the minimum farm parcel size to 50 acres, it brings that number up to approximately 3,014 lots that have the potential to be created across the county, that's a lot of additional lots. And then one important note for the committee to consider on this is that generally, upon the creation of one of those lots, a single detached dwelling would be permitted. It was created, yeah. So it's always good to have that information. And then Rob, are you able to speak to the next few slides about the 2021 work?
I guess this just illustrates from a numerical standpoint that not everything in the township or the counties are 100 acres or 40 hectares or whatever you want to say there. So historically, there's been a lot of things like severances and linear corridors and all different types of ways that the farmland area gets fragmented. So when you look at the mean, the average of it, so you're looking at across the county, 64 acres. And then what we do is I typically look at a non-farm parcel that might be 5 or 10 acres in size. You know, you probably only need an acre or 2 acres, but you're probably really not intending on farming something if you're 5 acres or 10 acres. So when you remove the parcels with 5 acres and smaller, obviously the average farm parcel size goes up. Still not to the point where, you know, I would say that you probably have to be in the 75 to 80 range there. So there's one municipality that's approaching that. So it's kind of hard to believe that the impact of severances or historic fragmentation, what's happened to on average, what happens to the overall parcel base for farmland. So for the next one.
Rob, if I could direct this question to you. On my way here today, I said to myself, I'm not going to bring up farm parcel size because I have for many years, and I respect the comments I have received back. But my municipality and particularly my council have been a proponent of 50-acre severances. There's a social cost that we have noticed. that isn't often talked about, and you haven't mentioned it either in your discussions, that corporate farming seems to be expanding in our area. There are a lot of severances on houses as a surplus farm dwelling, but you must remember that those severances are initiated by individuals buying up property and forming large corporations where they don't want to be landlords of houses. And we find very often those severance applications are from high acreage farmers. You know, I sat down with a group of farmers just several weeks ago, and there'd be maybe a dozen there. And the topic about the shortage of farmland, it's important to keep it. The gist of the conversation there was there's a shortage of farmers, period. Out of the 12 individuals at the table, only one had a succession plan where their family was going to continue on that farm. And school, a lot of the school buses are empty, going down gravel roads because of no one lives on them anymore. It's even showing up in agricultural societies and memberships and things like that, and those organizations. But there is, your policy development has social consequences, and we're beginning to see some of that. And I know that there may not be the appetite now for looking at smaller farm parcels, but I think in the future, I think history will show that those who have been advocates of 50 or 75 acre severances maybe weren't too far off the mark. Can you elaborate on that at all?
Got a couple stories. So the first thing that I think that you have to recognize regarding farming in North America, and in particular Canada, is that I would say since the Depression time, the movement from the farming or rural areas into the urban areas has been pronounced, and family sizes have been reduced. And I think we're just going through that demographic trend right now in Canada, and in particular in Ontario. And one of the big reasons for it is that there's just not enough money and not enough jobs generated in the farmland area to sustain everyone back in time. And you will find over the last 20 years that farming or agribusiness is likely one of the most productive industries in Ontario or Canada. What can happen now on a farm with 2 or 3 people is unbelievable compared to how many people used to have to run that farm back in my day. And I would say the similar trend is, you just mentioned it in your industrial portion, where you have a business, what is it, 100 million, or is it a $500 million or whatever, being run by 45 or 50 people? That's unbelievable what's happening, and it's happened all across Ontario and farming. So, and you're going to find more drones, folks using drones, folks using GPS, better, more efficient equipment. I know in our farm, we're able to use some robotics. So gone were the days where folks like me had to lift 50-pound boxes on a daily basis. That's all done by conveyors and robotics now. So while there's a social element of it, I don't think you can really step in the way of progress. This is what's happening, and farmers have to get bigger and more productive to stay competitive. So that's the one story. The second story that I have is that we'll go down to the States, in New York and further on down, and they have fragmentation of their farm parcels. And it's unbelievable how little farming is done in the rural area. even though they're still somewhat productive. But because the farms are so small, they've all gone back to forest uses or scrub land. And to the point where I was even wondering how they're going to be able to feed themselves. There's so many people in New York and those states that you look at it and go, my goodness, how are they ever going to feed themselves? They're going to have to rely on Western and the Midwest to keep things going. So that was definitely a concern as I started going down. And the other concern that I had was that because USA had a 100-year start on Ontario in terms of farming, the impact of soil erosion and soil health on their farmland areas is it's noticeable, scary, and you just thank God that the considerations related to soil health and soil improvements, crop improvements happened at the stage in Ontario, post-depression area Ontario, that they were able to get on top of it and sustain the good soils and the agricultural land for, Southern Ontario was probably the best bit of farming in North America. So while I hear you about having the social impact and also having the opportunity for younger farmers to get into the business, the reality of it is for farming to sustain itself, you still have to recognize that it's a business, and I would say you don't throw the bathwater out or the baby out with the bathwater. You want to be very careful how you do this, how you do these analysis. So I hear what you're saying. We've looked at it for our boys about getting into farming, and it's not just the land, it's everything to get yourself up to speed and make it productive. Like, you certainly couldn't do it on 100 acres, and I don't know how you're going to do it on 50 acres. You'd have to be into some sort of supply management. So say, for instance, chicken farm, you could probably do it on that, but then you got the infrastructure and the price of the quota that you have to deal with. So I wish there was an answer. I wish there's an answer that would say that the province and the counties support 25-acre farms, and I wish the farmland was $5,000 an acre, and I wish we could all make the money if my sons worked hard on the farm, that to be able to have a living that would support their family. But that's not really the case, and I think it's just going to get worse as we go through these international trade talks. So I don't know, does that help or does that hurt?
It's a difficult question. There's no question. There's pros and sides on both sides of the fence.
Yep. Yeah. The tests that we have, though, and the policy framework that is available, you can still go through the analysis, and there's still areas that from a statistical standpoint, and as I go through those 4 tests from the Foodland guidelines, I mean, they're not even relevant now, but they're relevant to me. As I go through them, you really thoroughly think it through, and there may be a case for it. We've seen cases for production of greenhouse products or flowers or things like that, and I was surprised as to how much money could be generated from that, and how little cull is with the crops. But in our business, the business that we grew up in, people looking at it always thought that there was so much money to be made at it, but they forgot that 50 to 60% of the crop we had to throw out. It was no good, and the infrastructure costs and the manpower that went into it. So there's no easy answer, that's for sure.
So we have the slide up, Rob, that includes the numbers for parcels with agricultural structures. I'm not sure if you wanted to speak to that one as well, or to move along to the next one. Next slide.
Yeah, that one relates, in my mind, likely the most probable reason is that you wanted to have a big enough farm parcel to be able to handle your manure on it. And that was the guidance that was received for, well, I would say probably 30, 40 years before the new provincial policy statement and the Nutrient Management Act. This is the way that we always thought that 100-acre parcel was going to be good enough, and you could rotate within that farm unit system, and we wanted to have the parcels big enough to handle the manure. So I think this table is reflective of it, that you're getting closer to that 100-acre number. But one of them there's 95 acres. That's about as good as you're going to get.
And then Rob, I didn't know if you wanted to talk about the observations from the agricultural parcel size analysis and their relevancy today.
Well, I think I've said most of it is that our family always recognized it, and my boys do too, is that Middlesex is blessed with great soils, great agricultural community. And there's a reason why there's such a viable agricultural economy in the county. It's not just the soils, but there's good climate, and there's quite a knowledge base in Middlesex. It's an enviable thing. And I think that the only things that fragmented are because we've had such good policies on limiting severances that the only things that result in fragmentation are historic linear corridors like railways, highways, and the fact that there are some rivers flowing through the area that will naturally fragment some of the areas. But for the most part, I would say it's a diverse and healthy agricultural system. And before you started tinkering with the numbers, I think you just want to be careful about opening up the gate too much on it. And I think I said this to Dirk before, is that I would like to see just how many vacant parcels are available within the county before we started looking at, or within a township before we started looking at reducing off of the 40-hectare number. If there wasn't a lot, then you'd probably have what you were talking about before. You'd probably have justification to look at it and see if you could reduce it a bit more. So that's about it on my comments on that slide.
And then are you also able to speak to this side as well, please, Rob?
That's similar to the Lambton characteristics, and so we suggested 38 hectares is the minimum to provide flexibility for livestock operations. I don't know if that gives anyone enough flexibility. Two of the municipalities, we saw that a lower number could be a reasonable consideration, but I'd be very careful about reducing the numbers without the understanding that it's difficult to predict the future, and I think OMAF will grind you all the way along. So, about it.
Anybody have any questions?
Probably self-explanatory, but I don't know, how do you calculate an acre size? Because I know, like, when I grew up, farm is around 100 acres, and you got a 5-acre parcel, you sort of lived on, and then you had 10 acres of bush. Sort of a pathway around, so our workable acres might be like 80 acres, if you say. Or are you just looking at the actual land? Like, so could I buy Buddy's bush from them and no account and then put my connector?
It's the actual size of the farm, including the lot size, the bush.
So it's not like
It's
workable
everything.
land.
It's everything, yes.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. It said we would look at the size of the parcel, and we wouldn't exclude the woodland areas from it. for the most part, we consider woodland areas, to be either agricultural or potential agricultural lands. The only time it wouldn't be is if it was a wetland, that kind of thing. So, yeah, we would look at the overall parcel size. I would say the one thing that we did on our statistical analysis in Lambton, that is likely different than a lot of other counties would do, is that we had the impact data, the tax data, but we went through and we counted up every parcel per township, and we identified everyone that had a livestock barn or any other kind of structure on it. We didn't rely on the impact data because I just don't have a lot of faith in it. I find that it's probably good for some of the things, but it's not been updated regularly, and I don't agree with some of some of the codes either. So we counted them up by hand, and that way, if I have to go on the stand and defend it, if I'm wrong on my adding, then that's on me.
Anything else? Any more questions?
Maybe partly to Alan, if the hope is we'll repopulate the rural areas with 50 acre separages, don't think it'll work. Where it'll work is in John's area, where if he gets 50 acre separages, they're gonna turn into a large building lot.
Well, that's the issue in my municipality. A 50-acre farm gets sold and a state house built right in the middle of it. And
Use up 10 acres minimum.
minimum, if not over half of it, is by the time they put a twisty gateway in, they have lawn, we decide to dig a pond. It's quite prevalent in my area, and we're trying to take steps to stop it. It's a tough thing to stop.
So you got a 50-acre estate lot, is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's a problem. That's a problem. I mean, like, I talked to Dirk about the old ways that we used to do those things, is that we'd have like a fringe area with special policies around around settlement areas, like say around London or that might allow for that kind of situation. But you'd want to keep the estate housing out of the prime agricultural area. That's not going to help anything. So
Not only does it ruin that 50 acres, but it sterilizes surrounding farms from livestock operations. Because every time you sever a surplus house off, then the MDS kicks in for livestock operations, and you're sterilizing all kinds of land that can't put up a chicken barn or a pig barn or anything else because it's too close to that severed house now. So it creates some problems that way too for agriculture, for livestock operations.
it did. I was never supportive of that policy that the province put in, but I know a lot of farmers are. So it frees up their money. So instead of paying $20,000 an acre, if they sever the house off, they get paid for it, they're now paying $10,000 an acre for their land. So I see the benefit on that way, but the potential for land use conflicts obviously increases when you start having 3-acre houses in the middle of a farm area. I didn't like the provision, but the provincial government never called me up about it. So we're dealing with those policies.
Exactly. Dirk?
So I guess, because I'm mindful of time and to respect people's time. So that's sort of, I guess, from a staff level, what we're thinking. This would be put into a report. Abby has got work to do. And so, but we wanted to hear directly from Rob, have those opportunities for questions, and then there'd be future decisions to be made. But respectfully, if it's okay, there are other agriculture related topics that could be put off to the next meeting if you'd like.
Yeah, I would think we've been out for 2 hours, and I think that's what was on the agenda, 2 hours. So people may have other commitments for today. So I haven't got through that much. I think it was a good discussion and we accomplished quite a bit. So further, conversations on the agricultural side and further things will happen at the next meeting, whenever you, want
Yeah,
to
so
call one.
we'll work to schedule that, and
Yeah.
the main topics would be agriculture, and our next topic would also, and all likelihood include, population projections, that topic, so that's just another.
Yes, so I think that's good. I thank our guest speaker, for being here. A lot of good information from you, sir. Thank you.
Right on. Good luck, folks.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No, we'll see you.
So at this, time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.